Okay, today we'll discuss exceptions. Uh, for this, we need to understand what exceptions are actually. When you are programming, you can encounter three types of problems. One are called compile time errors. Then you may have runtime errors. And then there may be logical errors, right? Compile time errors, for example, let me show you just once. If I write, say, a is equal to 10, if I write if a greater than or equal to 10, and I'm not writing here this colon here, I'm not writing colon here, and then I'm writing print match or something like that, right? So when I run this, or even before running it, you can see the compiler is smart enough. It is saying that there is invalid syntax. Compile time errors are all called syntax errors or grammar errors. We need to follow the grammar rules of the language. So we need to put a colon here. So syntax errors are reported by the compiler or interpreter itself, right? And most of the time, the message is such, like in this case, if I try to run it, here it is saying invalid syntax. So you'll be able to know, yes, where is the problem and how to solve it. So this is called syntax error. Then next we have runtime errors. There are certain errors which occur at runtime. For example, if I write a small function, concat, which will concatenate two values, since in Python we do not have data types associated with objects. So we are not specifying a or integer or what, right? And then if I write concat 1020 and I run it, it will work. But if I write here 10 and a, then there is an error because it is saying unsupported operand types for plus. When we have plus, then both the operands should be compatible. For example, if I write here b, then it's been concatenated, right? So this is a runtime error. There is no syntax error, there is no grammatical error, but it is a runtime error. दोनों clear हो गए बच्चे? Compile time and runtime. Are this clear to you?
Sir, runtime repeat kar do.
Runtime, those errors which are encountered during the execution of the program, they are called runtime errors. For example, if you look at this, अभी ये इसमें syntax error कोई नहीं है. अगर कोई syntax error होता, for example, I'm removing colon from here, and it is flashing an error message here, invalid syntax. So syntax error इसमें कोई नहीं है, right? It depends how you are giving the input. Like here, मैंने input दिया है B and A, both are strings, right? When I run, the strings are concatenated because they are compatible, right? Plus operand किस पे काम, operator किस पे काम करेगा? Compatible operands के ऊपर. अगर यहाँ मैं 10 and 20 दे दूं, it will work because both are numeric. तो उसका आंसर 30 आ जाएगा, वो उनकी एडिशन कर देगा. पर अगर एक numeric दे दूं और एक string दे दूं, then it will fail. So it is a runtime error, right? It is flashing an error message type error because plus is not meant for operating on integer and string together. Ab clear hai, Taran?
Yes, sir.
Right. Similarly, you are trying to open a file which doesn't exist is a runtime error, right? If I write here, let me write a very small program here. File open some ttt.txt, which doesn't exist, right? And then I write print length file dot read lines, means how many lines are there, and then I close the file, right? Oh, file is equal to open. Okay, fine. Now when I run it, क्या message आ गया? It is a runtime error because this file doesn't exist. ttt.txt. There is no syntax error, right? Run compile time error कोई नहीं है. When you will run, then it will get to know that ttt.txt file doesn't exist, so it will cause an error. समझ आ गया बच्चे? Karan, is it clear?
Yes, sir.
So
Yes, sir.
okay. Similarly, let me take up one more example. Very, very simple. Suppose we have a list. L is equal to, I'm writing here, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. And I try to print L4. What will happen? Karan, tell me what will happen? I'm trying to print fourth element of list L. What will happen here? Is there any error or not? See, there's no syntax error for sure, right? But is there any runtime? Can you tell me in advance before even running this program? Karan,
Yes, sir.
what's the error?
Sir,
What's the,
because
yes,
0, 1, 2, 3 मतलब 0 से start होगा ना.
very good, very good. इसमें इसकी इंडेक्स की एरर आ गई है. List
Yes,
index
sir.
out of range हो गया. You're trying to print fourth element which doesn't exist because the index of list from 0. Right? If I write here 3, then it will work. So this is also an example of runtime error. ये हो गया बेटा? हाँ जी बच्चे, क्लियर हो गया ये?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Now we move to logical error, the third kind of errors. Logical error means आपने लॉजिक ही गलत लिख दिया. सपोज आपने किसी एम्प्लॉइज को इंक्रीमेंट देना था, राइट? एंड उसकी सैलरी हमने एज पैरामीटर पास कर दी. तो सैलरी में इंक्रीमेंट क्या दिया? सैलरी इनटू 15 डिवाइडेड बाय 100. हमने क्या करना था? उसकी सैलरी को 15% इंक्रीज करना था, राइट? पर आपने फॉर्मूला लिख दिया ये, एंड देन यू आर रिटर्निंग सैलरी. उसके बाद आपने क्या किया? सैलरी इज इक्वल टू इंक्रीमेंट. उसकी सैलरी दी से 1000 रुपीज. ओके, अब 1000 रुपीज के ऊपर 15% इंक्रीमेंट हमने देना था, और उसके बाद उसकी सैलरी बढ़नी चाहिए थी. पर क्योंकि आपका लॉजिक गलत है, तो क्या होगा? यू कैन सी इट हियर. न्यू सैलरी उसकी 150 रुपीज रहेगी. कुड यू गेट द रीजन व्हाई? हमें करना क्या था कि एम्प्लॉय की सैलरी पे उसको 15% इंक्रीमेंट देना था. तो हमने क्या कर दिया? यहाँ लॉजिकल एरर है ना. हमने क्या किया? हमने 15% इंक्रीमेंट कैलकुलेट कर लिया, लेकिन सैलरी में उसको ऐड नहीं किया. कुड यू गेट दैट?
Yes, sir.
राइट. तो इसका एक सॉल्यूशन ये है कि सैलरी प्लस कर दो यहाँ पे, तो फिर निकल आएगा लाइक 1150 हो गया. ऑल्टरनेटिवली यू कैन मेक इट 115%. एक ही बात है. क्लियर बच्चे?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, what are exceptions? Runtime errors are basically exceptions. Some of these can be handled. I'm not saying all of these can be handled. Some of the runtime errors can be handled, right? So if we are able to handle it, we call it exception. Otherwise, it remains simply a runtime error. Is it clear?
Yes,
Some
sir.
runtime errors are inbuilt. In case of Python, all exceptions are handled using classes. We can call them exception classes. And the base class is base exception, right? This is the base class. I repeat, all exceptions are handled in Python using classes, or you can simply say exception handling in Python is implemented using classes. Okay, so how do we implement it? There are three different blocks. First is try block. So what you will write the logic in this. You will write the logic which may cause a runtime error, right? And then you will write an except block. This is for handling exception, right? And then a cleanup block. Finally, we call it finally, right? This is the block which will be executed at the end of it. So when you write these three, even first two are sufficient for handling exceptions, but third can also be used, right? But one thing you should be clear about is exception handling does not mean we are preventing exceptions. It is not possible to prevent exceptions. It may happen. Runtime errors may happen. We need to handle those, right? Prevention is something else. Prevention means you are not allowing runtime errors to happen. No, they may happen, then we will handle those. That's why we call it exception handling, right? Let me write a very small program, then I'll explain. Before going to the program, let me tell you, you can write a try block without writing any except or finally block. They are not compulsory. But you write an except block only if you have written a try block. Have you got it? Let me repeat it for you. You can write a try block and put your logic in the try block without writing any except or finally block, right? But you can write except block only if you have written a try block. So let us try this thing. Let us get two numbers. I'm writing the code in try block. A comma B is equal to integer X for X in input. Enter two numbers and then split. So we have got two numbers. Now let us find result of their division. Print the result of division is C. Okay. Let me write the except block now. Now, sometimes it may happen that the denominator has become 0. So it is an inbuilt exception handler. So I'll write here print division by 0 error. Enter some non-zero number. And then I'm not writing finally block. Let's try this. So it is asking for two numbers. If I enter 10 and 5, it will say result of division is 2. If I enter 10 and 0, it will raise an exception. Division by 0 error, enter some non-zero number. Is this thing clear? Ye clear hai bache?
Yes, sir.
Now what will happen? What will happen if I'm not handling this exception? What will happen? Okay. Let us remove this try block also. So I'm entering two numbers, 0, 10 and 0. It is saying division by 0, and the moment an exception is encountered and you are not handling it, your program will abnormally terminate. Is this thing clear? If an exception is raised by your program, which is not handled, then your program will abnormally terminate. And sometimes it may cause a lot of problem. For example, you are writing some data to a file and there is an exception like this, program will abnormally terminate and your file may not be properly closed. Some data may still be lying in the buffer and not sent to the file. So you may lose a lot of data if you're not handling exceptions. Ye clear ho gaya bache?
Yes, sir.
And within a program, there can be any number of exception blocks. There will be only one try block, but there can be any number of exception blocks. Because we may have different kinds of exceptions to handle, right? So there are certain things, let me tell you those. First, single try block can be followed by several except blocks. Second, multiple except blocks can be used to handle multiple exceptions. We'll discuss it. We'll take up an example of that. Third, we can write a try block without any except block. It is possible. I had told you this. Else block and final block are not compulsory. Again, I have told you this. When there is no exception, else block is executed after try block. Now, this is important. We have not discussed about else block. I'll write it now. I'll take up an example where we'll have else part of the exception. I'm writing try. Some date, let it be. Do you have any idea what is the purpose of evaluate function? Anybody, what's the purpose of evaluate function?
Don't know, sir.
ये हमने डिस्कस किया हुआ है. Anybody, Taran, do you have any idea?
No, sir.
Okay, I'll tell you. इसको ध्यान से सुनना. It's important. Let me write the code first, then I'll explain it to you. Okay, fine. Evaluate का purpose है, evaluate function, what it will do, it will evaluate whether the input given by you is list or tuple or dictionary, right? The input that you are giving is tuple, list, dictionary. It will evaluate that. If it could evaluate that, no exception will be raised, but if it fails, then it will raise an exception. For example, let us write it and let us try this program. And you can see it here. I have written here syntax error. Now, if the input is not following the rules of a list or tuple or dictionary, then it will be a syntax error. The input that you're giving to the program is not following the rules, syntax rules of a tuple, dictionary, or list, then it will be a syntax error. It will come here, else it will execute. If the exception is not raised, then it will execute the else part. So let's try this. Today is entering 7th of July. Oh, sorry, 21st of July 2021. You can enter it in any sequence, doesn't matter. So it has gone to the else part, as you can see. So it's writing you entered this. So it is a tuple or a list? Anybody? The input has been treated as a tuple or a list?
Tuple, sir.
Good, very good. Now let me tell you how will it fail, or why will it fail? Like here, I have entered 07, simply 07. I have made a change. It is a valid number, but it will not be accepted. It will write invalid integer because 07 doesn't make any sense. You should write 7 as an integer. Or if you enter some other character, for example, if I enter 2027B or something and then 21, again it will say invalid date entered, right? It will check the syntax accordingly. It will work. Is this thing clear, Vijay?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
This is an example of syntax error. Whatever actions we have discussed till now, all these are inbuilt exceptions or built-in exception handlers, right? Let us take up one more example of IO error. When the file doesn't exist, fname is equal to input, enter a file name, and then we'll open it. File is equal to open, fname for reading. Okay. And then accept IO error, printf file not found. We will write name of the file here. Else n is equal to say length of file dot read lines. How many lines we have read? Printf lines, or let us write it in a different way. File name as n lines, and then we will close the file. So what we have done here, we are getting the name from the user. We are trying to open it. If the file exists, it will come to the else part. We will read the lines. We'll get how many lines have been read in 10, and we'll print that file name this has these many lines, and we'll close the file. And if the file name doesn't exist, the file doesn't exist at all, then it will go to the exception. It will write file not found. Let's try this. So ttt.text, there is no file with this name, so we'll write file not found. Is it clear? Ye clear hai?
Yes,
Because
sir.
the ttt.text file doesn't exist. Let me run it again. This time I am entering elct21.txt, which exists. It will count the number of lines and display. Okay? Clear ho gaya? It
Yes,
is
sir.
showing that
Yes, sir.
this particular file has these many lines. So this is how you can handle IO error. Okay. Now one more example we'll take up. Then we'll move to let's discuss type errors. We are discussing the most common type of exceptions, right? So here we'll discuss type error. Let us write a function first. Define average from a list. Okay. So for finding average, we need to know the sum. For x in L, sum plus is equal to x, and then AVG is equal to sum divided by length of the list. Length of the list means how many elements are there. So this is a very simple function which will find out sum and average of average from a list of numbers. Clear hai ye bache?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now let us define S and A. Let us call this function average with a list 1, 4, 7, 9, 11, or maybe anything. Print sum is and average is dot format. I'm using different methods of displaying the values just to refresh your knowledge. Okay, now here let's have an exception. Type error. Most of the inbuilt or built exception handlers will have error at the end of name. Print type error, enter only numbers. Okay. And we can even have one more exception here. 0 division error. Right? We can have one more exception, 0 division error. Printf division by 0 error. Empty list entered. Okay, now let's try it. The list is given here, 1, 4, 7, 9, 11. We are calling this average function. It will find its sum, and then its average. We can find the sum 1 and 4 are 5, 5 and 7, 12, 12 and 9, 21, 21 and 11, 32. So sum is 32 divided by 5 is 0.4. That is the average. So answer is correct, right? So when you will call this function in try block, after 10 minutes, if the meeting closes, then we'll join again, okay? I want to discuss about things with you. If in case it closed, then we'll continue. Join again, okay?
Okay, sir.
So what will happen in this case? We will call the function average. If everything goes well, sum and average will be computed and it will display the result. But if there is an error, for example, type error, if I enter here, because a list can contain multiple types of data, right? So here is a type error. You can see it here. It says type enter only numbers. This is not a number, right? So it will cause an exception. It will come here, type error. Since it is a type error, it will be handled here. And if we enter an empty list, then its length will be 0, right? Empty list length will be 0. So what we are trying to divide sum by 0. It means division by 0 error is there. And you can see divide by 0 error, empty list entered. ये clear हो गया बेटा?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now this thing can be done in a single block also. So if I write here, type error, comma, okay. So through one exception handler, we are handling both the exceptions. If I run it, it says type error or 0 division error, enter only numbers and ensure that list is not empty. Okay, we'll enter some numbers here and a string. So this time again, error is there, type error or 0 division error, enter only numbers and ensure that list is not empty. So finally, we'll enter some meaningful. All numbers are there and it is working. Ye clear hai bete? So you can handle multiple exceptions through one except block also, but it is generally not recommended because you need to know that what specific kind of exception has been raised. So it is better to have multiple blocks instead of one single except block. It is generally not recommended, but facility is there. You can use it if you want. यहाँ तक clear हो गया बच्चे?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then we can define our own exceptions also. Okay. I'll stop the meeting here and start it again so that the whole part of that user defined exception could be in one video only. Okay. So join again. I'm stopping the meeting and need to join again. I'm ending the meeting. Join again. Okay.